It's that time of year, people. Halloween season. So I decided that I'm going to put together my top 10 favorite horror movies. Now, coming up with this list was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be, although there were some movies that got moved around and some that got bumped off the list altogether. Now, the background image that you see here is from The Exorcist. The Exorcist did not make my list. I'll point this out that some of these movies are very much conditional. Whether they made the list or not relates to when I saw them and, how I felt at that time. So as far as The Exorcist is concerned, I did not see it until I was an adult. And by the time that I saw it, I had seen so many clips of it that I was basically desensitized to it. So it really didn't bother me at all. Now, if I had seen it when I was young, I'm pretty sure that would be different. And I know that's what makes it a classic to a lot of people. But again, for me, it just really didn't have much of an effect on me. I still think it's a great movie, but it just didn't make my top 10. Other than that movie, I'm really not going to probably mention too many others that didn't make the list. I'm just going to focus on my top 10 as much as possible. Starting off with number 10. Now, this movie I didn't see when I was young. I did see this as an adult. But the reason that Rosemary's Baby makes the list is really on the strength of the last scene. And I think it's very rare when a movie can just completely come together and just send chills up your spines just based off of the last scene. But Rosemary's Baby absolutely manages to do that. It is directed in that very old school style where some of it feels kind of methodical, very slow paced, and I can see some people maybe being bored with it early on. But if you really stick with it, like I said, I think the last scene is just the big payoff, totally worth it. Now, number 9 here, this movie really gets into the type of horror that I like. I really like psychological horror. I'm not about just gore and torture movies, those torture type movies, because to me that's not true horror. That's just putting gross images in front of somebody and that makes them look away and they're disgusted by it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're afraid. They're just grossed out. So I like horror that is more on a psychological side. To me, that is true horror. So 1408, it has a great performance by John Cusack. He really carries the movie, and I just love the little mind tricks going on with it throughout the movie. And it's PG-13, but it really doesn't need to be rated R. At least I think it's PG-13. I'm not 100% sure about that, but there really isn't anything in it that's terribly graphic. It's a very watchable movie. When I mean watchable, I mean like by a wide audience, and it's just entertaining. Next up here, kind of old school here, Tales from the Hood. I know some people would think this movie is kind of cheesy, but to me, I really like the social commentary within it. It addresses a lot of issues that are not just about relating to the African American community, although that is the main focus, but it's really about America in general, some of the issues within this country. So it has a lot of great social commentary, and it is basically an anthology movie. There are short stories within it, and I like all of them. They all have something to say, and it all comes together well in the end. This is something that makes this movie special, is that the framing device, the short scenes used throughout that are connected together, to bring all of the stories together, they actually have an impact as well, and they have a resolution as well, which I really like, and you don't get that from every anthology. Also, one other quick note, if you're really a big hip-hop fan, this movie did have a pretty good soundtrack as well. Next up here, Insidious. Insidious deserves a lot of credit for, to me, reinvigorating the horror genre. I think leading up to Insidious, there were just a lot of bland horror movies. Found footage was kind of taking over, and I mean, there were some successful movies, but I think Insidious just really hit a lot of great notes. It really does a lot of different things. It definitely has the psychological elements, the supernatural elements as well, cleverly directed. It's just a very effective movie. I just remember being blown away when I saw this in the theater, and the trailer really did grab my attention. I was like, I gotta see this in the theater, and it was totally worth it. I don't know so much about the sequels. I know I didn't like the second. I'm not sure if I ever even got around to watching the third. As a matter of fact, I think I did, and I was pretty much bored with it, but maybe I need to give it another chance. But yeah, the first one though still to me is stands out. Great movie. Jeepers Creepers. Not the scariest movie, but so fun. And the Creeper has so much personality. I did learn not that long ago that the Creeper character is pretty much a ripoff of a Marvel character named Terror. And I'm not exaggerating that. If you look up Marvel and you look up the character Terror, then you'll see that there are a lot of similarities, and the character Terror came out way before Jeepers Creepers. But to me, it doesn't take away from the fact that the Creeper is a great character. And just a little side note here, I collect Funko Pops, and where's the Creeper Funko Pop? They got to do more with horror. This is definitely one character I think that deserves to be represented. And I really would just like to see more collectibles with the Creeper in general, because he's such a well-designed character, and I really like that he has personality. Whereas Jason Voorhees is great, but he's pretty much just a killing machine. No real personality going on there. The Creeper definitely has personality. He has a sense of humor as well. Now, just a side note here. This is not part of the countdown necessarily, but I did want to give my scariest scene of all time from a horror movie. This is not in the top 10, though. The Ring is not in the top 10 because overall, I thought it was a good movie. Not great. It's a good movie overall, but I remember watching this. I think the first time I saw it was actually at home. I think I saw the sequel in the theater, but I think I waited and watched The Ring at home. And when Samara, the villainous character, crawled out of the TV, I think I literally jumped up like, oh my God, like if that, because it's something that you could imagine happening to you, you know, something coming out of the screen, and that's what really makes it such a powerful scene. So remember, I'm into psychological horror, so I think that's why this is my scariest scene of all time. It's not about what is the grossest or most violent scene of all time. Just on a psychological level, this scene stands out to me. But let's go ahead and get back to the countdown. Number 5, I know a lot of people would not put this in their top 5. They might think it's a pretty average horror movie, and I can understand that. But I really appreciate Quarantine, which is a remake of a Spanish movie called Rec or Record. I just think it's better than the original. I did watch the original. The original has some sort of religious undertones to me that just don't make a lot of sense, and they feel kind of like a lazy way of explaining what's going on. Whereas I think Quarantine is a lot more grounded in reality, and it's just brilliantly directed as well. If you really appreciate filmmaking, I think that's what really will stand out for you with Quarantine. It's so well directed, and I'm a sucker for long takes. That's where you don't really see the editing. It looks like it's all one shot, and the last almost half of this movie is filmed that way, and it's pretty brilliantly done. So if you had never checked out Quarantine, definitely give it a go. And the lead actress, some people aren't a big fan of Jennifer Carpenter, but I think she's pretty great in this. I did like her in Dexter as well, the series, but I think she's pretty great in this series, or excuse me, in this movie as well. I don't think anybody's surprised by this. I really don't have to explain it. The Shining is a classic. Now, one thing I will note is this is an older movie, so it does have that very methodical style I was talking about. And again, I know for some people, it may seem a little bit boring at first, but I think it's also very chilling. The soundtrack, I think, draws you in. Stanley Kubrick, definitely a great director. I'm kind of disappointed. I heard recently about what he put the actors through, in particular the lead actress, Shelley Duvall, what he put her through on set. Kind of cruel in a way, how many takes he made her go through for a very emotional scene. And I know he's kind of rough on her, and I'm not a fan of that, but it doesn't really take away from the fact that this is a great movie. It is a classic. A very underappreciated horror movie, in my opinion, is Jacob's Ladder. If you watch this movie, and let's say you've never seen it before and you watch it, you'll see that so many other horror movies kind of took some of the imagery and ideas from Jacob's Ladder. And Jacob's Ladder came out a good while ago, over 20 years ago, I believe. And like I said, you'll just see that a lot of other movies kind of borrowed from it, elements from it. So I really don't get why it's such an underappreciated movie. And I absolutely love the ending. The ending is both is very tragic, and yet there's something beautiful about it at the same time. You just have to watch it to understand it. I know that sounds a little pretentious, but trust me, you watch the movie, you'll see exactly what I mean. And Tim Robbins, he's just a brilliant performer. He does a great job in this movie. I really wish that he was in more movies. He doesn't seem to have the longest filmography, but I know he does some things behind the camera sometimes, but he's absolutely amazing in this movie. I think it's probably his best performance, maybe after Shawshank Redemption. Now, I know a lot of people that know me might assume that A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors was going to be #1. I kind of went back and forth with this, but when I think about horror, there's another movie that comes to my mind right before this one, so I had to give #1 to another movie. But still, of course, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 definitely has a special place in my heart. I watched this movie over and over and over as a kid, even though I know when I being that young, I probably shouldn't have been watching it, but my father was overseas in the military. My mom would go out a lot at night, and I know that sounds bad, but it's nothing negative, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, but she would go away, get out the house. And anyway, the babysitter that would come over he was a young guy, and he really loved this movie as well. And every time he would come over, he'd say, "Go ahead and throw in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3," and we would watch it over and over as if it was a TV show. And the kills in this movie, almost every one of them is just classic. They put so much thought. I mean, Wes Craven put so much thought into each kill in this movie. I think the last few minutes slightly weak, and that's another thing that kind of edged it out from being #1. I think the ending does fall just a little bit flat because it's not quite as creative as the rest of the movie, but still, this is a very important movie to me because it's where Freddy Krueger got more personality. He started to work in a little bit of humor there, and also it gave the kids, basically the teenagers, more of a chance against him. They learned that they can actually fight back, and it did, to me, make the movies more interesting as opposed to just being cannon fodder. They did at least get a chance to fight back against him. And my #1 movie, again, very underappreciated. There are a lot of people that when I mention In the Mouth of Madness, they're just like, it's blank stares. I can tell they've never even heard of it. But In the Mouth of Madness is true psychological horror. It does have some gore in it as well for people that are into that. It really is a great mix of different styles of horror, and it all works together so well. It's just a brilliant movie, and I'm using that word a lot, but I mean, this is a top 10, so of course I'm going to put together a list of movies that I feel are brilliant in certain ways. So In the Mouth of Madness is very much inspired by Stephen King, the actual writer. That does play, or I should say his life and everything kind of plays into the plot of this movie in a very interesting way. Can't really say too much without giving it away. I'll just say the basic plot to it. Sam Neill plays a character who's basically he checks out insurance fraud, and there's this book coming out. The book in the movie is actually called In the Mouth of Madness, and the author of that book has vanished. So he's looking into that to see what's going on, if this is like a publicity stunt or something where the author went to, and it takes him on a pretty crazy journey. So In the Mouth of Madness, if you've never heard of it, definitely check it out. It's my #1 for a big reason. I think you will appreciate it. And if you do check it out, please come back to this video and let me know what you thought of it. So I want to hear from you all. You could drop it down in the comments, or if you're a YouTuber, I would love it if you did your own video. What are your favorite horror movies? Please do share, and maybe that'll give me some new movies that I've never heard of to check out. I would really appreciate that, especially with this being Halloween time. But to me, any time of the year is a great time for horror. So I hope you enjoyed my top 10 list. If you're not familiar with some of the movies, please do check them out. And like I said, let me know what you think about them. And if you're new to my channel, please like, comment, subscribe. I would really appreciate that. Thank you all for watching, and hope you enjoy your Halloween.